I always thought online dating was harmless. You chat, you meet, and sometimes you find a connection. But after what happened to me, I will never let a stranger from an app into my life again. His name was Luke. He had dark hair, a kind smile, and a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. We matched on Bumble, and within minutes, he had me hooked with his quick wit and charm. We decided to meet for coffee after a week of talking. It went well, too well. He was charismatic, attentive, and said all the right things. By the end of the date, he suggested coming over to my place to watch a movie. I hesitated, but something about him made me feel safe. That was my first mistake. We spent a few hours together at my apartment watching Netflix and talking. He never tried anything, just sat close and listened to everything I had to say. It felt nice. But when midnight hit, I told him it was time for him to go. He smiled, kissed my cheek, and left. Or so I thought. I woke up around 3 a.m. to a soft noise. My apartment was dark, but something felt off. I reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight. That's when I saw him. Luke was standing at the foot of my bed. I screamed, jumping back, my heart slamming against my ribs. He didn't move, just stood there watching me. His expression was blank, almost curious. "Luke," I whispered, my voice shaking. "What are you doing here?" He tilted his head. I didn't want to leave yet. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, but he lunged at me, snatching it away. "Shh," he whispered. "I just want to talk." I did the only thing I could. I ran. I darted past him out of my bedroom and into the hallway. I fumbled with the locks, yanking the door open just as he grabbed my arm. I screamed again, kicking him as hard as I could. He let go for just a second, long enough for me to dash outside and start banging on my neighbor's door. Luke ran. The police arrived soon after. They found my apartment window unlocked, a spare key from my kitchen drawer missing, and a knife under my couch. I never heard from Luke again. His Bumble profile disappeared the next morning. But sometimes at night, I still feel like someone's watching me. I never expected much from dating apps. A few casual conversations here and there, maybe a date if the chemistry seemed right. But I never imagined that one innocent swipe could lead to the most horrifying experience of my life. It started on a chilly Friday night. I had just finished a long work week and was lounging on my couch, mindlessly swiping through Bumble. That's when I matched with her, Lena. She was gorgeous with piercing green eyes and long, wavy black hair. Her profile was minimal, just a few pictures, and a bio that read, "Looking for something real. Let's make memories." We started chatting, and she was charming, almost too perfect. Her responses were instant, as if she was always waiting for my messages. We talked for hours, and by the end of the night, we had plans to meet the next day for dinner. I felt a strange sense of excitement mixed with unease, but I brushed it off as first date jitters. The next evening, I arrived at the restaurant early. Lena had chosen a small, dimly lit Italian place on the outskirts of town. When she walked in, she was even more stunning in person, but something about her felt off. Her eyes were just a little too intense, her smile lingering a little too long. Dinner was pleasant, though. She laughed at my jokes, and our conversation flowed naturally, but every now and then she'd say something strange. Little things, like mentioning a personal detail about me that I hadn't shared. At one point, she casually referenced my sister's name. I hadn't even told her I had a sister. I hesitated before asking, "How do you know that?" She blinked and smiled. "You must have mentioned it." I hadn't. The unease in my gut tightened, but I didn't want to seem paranoid. The night continued, and eventually I walked her to her car. She insisted on driving me home since it was raining. Against my better judgment, I agreed. As we drove, she asked if she could come inside for a bit. I declined, making an excuse about an early morning. Her face darkened, just for a second, before she forced a smile and nodded. "Next time, then," she said softly. I went inside and locked the door, feeling an inexplicable sense of relief. But the night wasn't over. At around 2 a.m., I woke to a strange sound. My phone buzzing. A notification from Bumble. You have a new match. Confused, I opened the app. It was Lena. Again. The same pictures. The same bio. As if we had never matched before. My stomach twisted into knots. My first thought was that she had unmatched and remade her profile. But why? And how did I match with her again automatically? Then a message popped up. Why did you lock your door? My blood ran cold. I bolted up and checked my front door, still locked. I turned to my window. The blinds were shut, but the thought that she could be outside watching made my skin crawl. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a coincidence, maybe she was joking, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. I had such a great time tonight. Sleep well. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, I reported the profile to Bumble and blocked the number. I convinced myself that was the end of it. I was wrong. For the next week, I kept seeing Lena's profile pop up under different names, but always with the same photos. The messages continued. Different numbers, different accounts, always eerily knowing details about my life. Then, one night, I came home to find my apartment door slightly ajar. My heart pounded as I pushed it open, every instinct screaming at me to run. Inside, nothing seemed out of place until I saw my bed. Resting neatly on my pillow was a single Polaroid of me, asleep. The police took my report, but without tangible evidence of a break-in or a direct threat, there wasn't much they could do. I changed my locks, installed security cameras, and moved in with a friend for a while. The messages eventually stopped. The fake profiles disappeared. But to this day, I still wonder, was Lena watching me all along? Had she been inside my home before I ever knew her name? And worst of all, was she still out there waiting for another unsuspecting swipe? Online dating was supposed to be fun. A way to meet new people, go on exciting dates, and maybe even find something real. But after what happened to me, I'll never use Bumble or any dating app again. It all started when I matched with a guy named Aaron. His profile was simple but engaging, some travel pictures, a dog, and a witty bio that read, "Fluent in sarcasm and bad decisions." He was charming, funny, and seemed normal. That's the key part. I thought he was normal. We chatted for a couple of days before he asked me out for drinks. He suggested a bar downtown, one I had been to a few times before. It was a public place, so I felt safe agreeing. When I arrived, he was already there, waiting with a drink in hand. He looked just like his pictures, which was a relief. Too many times I had heard horror stories of catfishing. The conversation flowed easily. He was charismatic, quick-witted, and made me laugh more than I had in weeks. But there was something slightly off about him. He would stare just a little too long when I spoke, and every so often he'd bring up details I hadn't shared yet. "You're from Crestwood, right?" he asked at one point. I hesitated. I had never told him that. Yeah, how did you know?" He grinned. "I think you mentioned it." I knew I hadn't, but I laughed it off, trying to convince myself I was being paranoid. As the night went on, he kept steering the conversation toward deep, personal topics. My family, my childhood, my past relationships. Something about the way he absorbed every word sent chills down my spine. It was like he was studying me. I decided to cut the night short, telling him I had an early morning. He seemed disappointed but didn't argue. Instead, he insisted on walking me to my car. At that moment, I regretted parking in the more secluded back lot. As we walked, he got eerily quiet. The playful energy from earlier was gone. Just as I reached my car, he stepped closer, invading my space. I froze. "You know," he murmured, "I feel like I already know you so well." I forced a laugh. "Yeah, crazy how fast conversation flows." He didn't smile. "No, I mean, I really know you." A shiver ran down my spine. I fumbled for my car keys, trying to stay calm. "Well, it was nice meeting you, Aaron. I should get going." He watched me, his expression unreadable. Then finally he stepped back. Drive safe. I got in my car and locked the doors immediately. As I pulled out of the lot, I checked my rearview mirror. He was still standing there, watching me drive away. When I got home, I decided I wasn't being paranoid. Something was definitely wrong with Aaron. I went to check our chat history on Bumble, but it was gone. Not just our conversation, but his entire profile. He had vanished. The next day, a text came from an unknown number. "Why did you leave so early?" My blood turned to ice. I hadn't given him my number. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked the number. Over the next few days, more messages came from different numbers. "I had a great time." "Why aren't you answering?" "You seemed scared. That's cute." I reported everything to Bumble, but there was nothing they could do. I changed my number, deleted the app, and tried to move on. Then, a week later, I got a Facebook friend request. From Aaron. His profile had no pictures, no mutual friends, just his name. My hands shook as I clicked on it, only to find a single post written just an hour before. "You can't hide forever." I moved out of my apartment that month. To this day, I don't know how he found out so much about me or what he really wanted. But I do know this. Sometimes a perfect match can turn into your worst nightmare. I've always been cautious when it comes to online dating. I never met someone without doing my due diligence, checking their social media, making sure they weren't too mysterious, always meeting in a public place. But none of that mattered the night I met Daniel. His profile was normal enough. He was good looking, had a solid job in tech, and his bio read, "Love hiking, road trips, and finding the best burger in town. Let's make memories." Standard, nothing alarming. We chatted for about a week, and he was funny, engaging, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. One evening, he suggested we grab dinner at a well-known restaurant downtown. It was a Friday night, busy and well-lit, so I agreed. When I arrived, he was already there, smiling at me from the bar. He looked just like his pictures. Tall, clean-shaven, with warm brown eyes. If anything, he seemed even more charming in person. We had dinner, and the conversation was great. But there were little things. Minor, strange details that stuck in my mind. He knew I had a younger brother, even though I never mentioned it. He referenced a specific coffee shop I liked, though I hadn't told him about it. When I asked how he knew, he laughed it off and said, "Maybe you told me, or maybe I'm just really good at reading people." Something about the way he said it sent chills down my spine. I should have left then, but I didn't. After dinner, he suggested taking a short walk since the weather was nice. I hesitated but agreed, figuring we'd stay on the busy streets. But he slowly steered us toward a quieter part of town, near an old park. I finally stopped and said I needed to get home. That's when his whole demeanor changed. His easygoing smile faded. He stepped closer, his face eerily blank. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. We were having such a good time. I forced a laugh. "Yeah, I've got an early morning." He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay," he said. But something in his tone made my skin crawl. He walked me back to my car, and I locked my doors the second I got in. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror. He was still standing there, watching me. When I got home, I checked my phone. I had a new message from him. "Drive safe. I'll see you soon." I never told him where I lived. I didn't respond. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I woke up to another message. "You looked beautiful sleeping." My blood ran cold. I checked my apartment's front door. It was locked. The windows are locked. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been inside. I went to the police, but without concrete evidence, there was little they could do. They advised me to stay with someone for a while, change my routine, and block his number. I did all of that. But for the next few weeks, I kept seeing shadows outside my window at night. My door handle would rattle when I was alone. I started waking up at odd hours, feeling like I wasn't alone. Then one night, I heard something outside my bedroom window. A scraping sound. I didn't move. My phone was already in my hand, and I dialed 911 as quietly as I could. I whispered my address to the operator, barely breathing. The sound stopped. I stayed frozen in bed until I heard sirens. And by the time the police arrived, whoever had been outside was gone. But they found something near my window, a single Polaroid photo. It was a picture of me, taken from outside my apartment. That was the last time I ever used Bumble. I moved, changed my number, and deleted all my dating profiles. To this day, I don't know how much Daniel knew about me before we met, or how long he had been watching me. But I do know one thing. He wasn't looking for love. He was hunting. I never thought a simple swipe right could change my life forever. But then I met Ethan. Ethan seemed perfect. He had a laid-back personality, a great sense of humor, and a smile that made me feel at ease. We matched on Bumble, and from the start, the conversation was effortless. He asked about my favorite movies, my childhood memories, and even sent me a playlist of songs he thought I'd like. I felt like I had known him forever. After 2 weeks of texting, we met in person. He took me to a cozy little restaurant, and everything felt like a dream. The chemistry was electric, and by the end of the night, I didn't want to say goodbye. He walked me to my car, hugged me tightly, and whispered, "I can't wait to see you again." That was the last time I ever truly felt safe. The messages started coming at odd hours. At first, they were sweet. "Good night, beautiful." Then they became unsettling. "Why aren't you answering?" If I didn't respond quickly, he'd bombard me with calls. One night, I got home late from work and noticed something strange. My apartment door was unlocked. My stomach twisted. I was sure I had locked it that morning. I stepped inside cautiously, heart pounding. Everything looked normal until I noticed my closet door slightly open. I never leave it open. Slowly, I approached and yanked it open. Nothing, but something was off. Then my phone vibrated. "Nice dress today. Red is your color." I was wearing a red dress. My hands shook as I locked every door and window, but I barely slept that night. The next morning, I went to the leasing office and asked them to check the security cameras. They told me the footage was missing for the past 3 days. I changed my locks, my number, and even stayed at a friend's house. But every time I returned home, I felt watched. I started finding small things moved, books out of place, the bathroom mirror fogged up as if someone had just used the shower. Then, one night, I woke up to breathing. Not mine. I shot up in bed and reached for my phone. The darkness was suffocating. I turned on the flashlight and scanned the room. Nothing. I was going crazy, right? Then my phone vibrated. A new message from an unknown number. "Why did you move your mirror? I liked watching you." I ran out of my apartment that night and never went back. The police never found Ethan. His Bumble profile was gone. To this day, I don't know how long he had been inside my apartment before I realized it, or if he ever truly left.